All right, guys. Today, I'm kind of excited because I got one of my really close friends and a former instructor. I trained with Stephen Hayes back like in 1980 and I have to tell you a little bit about him. So, he was on the cover of practically every magazine in the early 80s because he did something that was pretty amazing. He made a trek to go to Japan and studied ninjutsu and kind of brought it back into America. So, I would read about him, and I got his books, Shadows of the Iga, and kind of followed his journey. And I remember this is about the same time I started training the Filipino in the JKD. I got introduced with Danny Asano. I went to the first Irvine camp, and then I saw that this guy that was a ninja, real ninja, went to Japan, and he had this Shadows of Iga festival. I think it was in 1981, right, Steve? I think it was the first one. So I got one of my students, and one of my students, I can't remember his name, but he was like really into ninjutsu, and he was the guy he fantasized about. So, hey, you want to go to this ninja festival thing with me? So he goes, yeah, that's so cool. He was excited for like months in advance. But we get into Dayton, Ohio. I probably would have never went to Dayton, Ohio had not I sought out, this ninja guy. And that was kind of my first time that I met, Steve Hayes. And I was very, very impressed, with his deep voice, the Steve Hayes deep voice. And I thought, wow, this guy's pretty cool. It's a deep voice. And then I found out, he did Shogun. And this is before I got into acting, but I think I told you this once, Stephen, that you were kind of the reason why I actually got into acting, because I just thought you looked so cool in that one photo where you were in the snow, and that was kind of your PR picture, and you had the sword here, and I go, remember that? I go, it almost looks like something out of Game of Thrones. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I go, oh, I want to be like him, So it was over where I started talking with a deeper voice. That's probably why I got that good radio voice. I got it from Stephen Hayes. So, but that was kind of my first introduction to him. And, we, at that time, no one else was doing ninjutsu. And I told Stephen, I go, okay, we get to this festival. I said, how do I learn more? Right. And he goes, oh, I have a festival every year. And I said, well, can I bring you in for a seminar? So I was the first one to kind of bring him into, Washington State. And I became kind of his chapter for Washington State. And then over the years, we just developed a really kind of great friendship. So, Steve, welcome.
Great to be here. Great to be here. Good to
You
be
know
a
what I,
part.
you know what would have been awesome? Because you talked about that voice. If you went, oh, thanks for having me, Cliff.
Good to be here.
No, you're legend. We're so honored to have you on. I mean, I've always admired you and what you've done. And every time I think of ninjutsu, I think of Stephen Hayes. So you're a staple.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, great to be here.
Thank you for
You got to catch me up real fast on what you guys have covered and what you're doing and who your listeners are and what do they want,
the way we modeled the show is we didn't want to just like, I don't want MMA guys all the time. And it's nice. And there's some great people and I would love to have them. But I want people who've really walked that long journey, who really know the ins and outs more than, like most of all these other artists, or wannabe artists, even, what makes me, piques my interest is what makes you tick, who made you do what, like if I had a bag of, if you had 10 names in there of like, really, I mean, if I had you in front of me, I'd have you say, write 10 names who were influential, and we'd throw them in a bag, shake it up, and I'd say, pick one out, and I'd say that name, and I would say, tell me about them, and I'd love to hear the story. So pick a name, please.
Oh, well, I think all of us, are fortunate. Of course, the one man who influenced us the most was our dad, and I had a great dad, and he was not involved in martial arts at all. So, of course, a lot of his business acumen and so forth really influenced me a lot, and I couldn't help it. And in fact, he had a program that he ran for business people, how to make yourself a celebrity. This is back in the 60s, things that you can do, actual stuff you could start doing. And so I went away and became a ninja and did all this. And people were saying, wow, you sure didn't follow your father's footsteps. No, I did everything that he taught. That's how I became well known. That's how I became a kind of staple in the martial arts. I followed my dad's program, and he was very proud of me. He was my number one fan.
Ira was your dad, right? Ira Hayes.
Ira Hayes.
Motivational speaker phenomenon. You know why? You see how it rubbed off on Steven, right? He learned something from his dad, paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. There was another Ira Hayes. It was a Pima Indian who was involved in raising the flag on Iwo Jima.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Different Ira Hayes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be one name.
Steven, I think why I think people need to understand is you made this journey to Japan. And of course, everything's, oh yeah, I just go get on a plane and go fly in. All the things that you had to deal with is the real story, right? I mean, you just didn't jump in and say, hey, I'm here, Dr. Hatsumi, I'm here to train, and got with the number one guy. Give us a little kind of a brief summary, how that took place when you decided to make that journey.
Well, back in the mid 70s, there was no internet, there was no email, you couldn't even page people. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was just so obsessed. I had been since I was a high school kid. I read a James Bond novel, and James Bond went to Japan. And he was trained by the Togakure and the Iga ninja. And it describes this training. And oh man, I'm just a boring kid from Kettering, Ohio, and I'm reading this thing. And in the book, they get him married to this gorgeous Japanese girl from the southern island of Kyushu, a little fishing village from Kyushu Island. And he marries her, and he's protecting the monarch. And oh God, it's so cool. And so I started out, I've just got to try it. And I had no idea what I was doing. I got on an airplane, got to Tokyo airport. I just started out on trains and bumped into people who told me how to get to different places, just a miracle. And finally ended up in Noda City, Japan. And I ended up at this little inn, and nobody knew about this Hatsumi. And the innkeeper asked me, she says, what are you doing here? No foreigners come to this little soy sauce brewing town. I said, well, I'm here to meet Masaaki Hatsumi, the grandmaster of the ninja. She just cracks up, Well, no, Hatsumi's a physical therapist. He's not a ninja. And that's what he did. I knew this is the guy, And I said, no, that's the guy. And she says, well, no, he's not a ninja. And so I said, do you know him? And she says, oh yeah, his mother and I were childhood friends. I've watched him grow up. And do you want me to call him? This was just the inn that I happened to stay at, I mean, miracles like that happened. She called him. He came over that night. He said, oh, you can study with these guys tomorrow. And I thought I'd have to I had a suit and tie on, I was going to impress these guys. And I thought I'd have to go through an interview process. No, you can train tomorrow. They'll pick you up and take you out to the rice fields and you can train there. I was so honored, that they would accept me. Years later, Rumiko, my wife, is talking to one of my, the Japanese seniors. She said, oh yeah, Steven was really honored. You guys just accepted him. And this guy, he's a colonel in the Japanese army. And he goes, oh, is that what he thought happened? And she says, wait, what was going on? And he says, oh no, Steven, in our generation, he was a big guy. And we thought we could try out our techniques on him. He'd stay for about 5 days and get fed up with us and leave, and we could go back to training. He just never left. So I guess I was lucky. I didn't know what was going on. I remember I was doing just linear striking and kicking, no grappling, no choking, no weapons, no angling. It was a very crude system, but I loved it. You know, I did it for 10 years. Everything was new and different. And I just, man, to start all over again, it was just a wonderful opportunity. It's just a beautiful opportunity. And, you know, even to this day, I feel so lucky, just so lucky that I happened to get there at that time and train with him. Several years later, you know, I was reviewing my career and I'm thinking, hey, this is kind of wild. You know, I went to Japan. I was trained by the Togakure and the Iga Ninja. Yeah, you did that. And I met this girl from a seacoast village on Kyushu Island and managed to talk her into marrying me, you know, and then at that time I was doing the security escort work for the Dalai Lama when he was in North America. So he's kind of, you know, like the monarch. So I'm protecting the monarch. So, gee, I got all those things that I fantasized as a 15-year-old. You know, another friend said, well, you should have read Think and Grow Rich. You know?
Yeah, but think how rich your life has been. Oh my God. Yeah, that's brilliant. So now you went to school for theater,
I did. I
and
did.
was that the original plan?
No, I had no idea. When I went to university, I had not studied any martial arts. I'd wanted to since I was like a 6-year-old kid, but you know, in Ohio, there were no schools in the 50s and early 60s. And so one of the things I did was I got involved in a US Navy, this is back in the Vietnam days, you know, and there were these Korean War veterans who had studied Tang Sudo in Korea, and they had a club. And I wasn't in the Navy, but I managed to get in there. So I was studying martial arts and then doing theater as my major. And, you know, one thing led to another. I ended up in Japan where I looked kind of unusual, you know, and easy to get TV and movie jobs. I had an agent and everything. And,
Wow.
you know, yeah, it was great. It was great. And, you know, the Shogun, I don't know if anybody remembers Shogun or
I
not.
totally remember. Yeah. Yeah.
40 years ago. But I heard they were doing Shogun. And I called my agent and I said, hey, they're doing Shogun. And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, you didn't get me a job with Shogun? And he goes, oh, no. He says, they are way beneath your pay scale. And I said, well, in this case, I'll lower my pay scale. I'd love to be in this movie. And he said, oh, I'll give him a call. And I ended up working with him for a month and a half. I was a stunt double for John Rhys Davies. You know, he was Gimli in the Hobbit movie, and he was beautiful. He's this huge Shakespearean actor, you know. I got to imitate him, you know. And you like, oh, British voice, and he commands the ship. And oh, I got to imitate that. And so they had 2 suits. They had one for me and one for John. And I would wear a life vest, a water ski life vest under the suit to make me look like John. And so Richard Chamberlain I still remember, Richard Chamberlain was here. John was there when we were getting made up, and they would make me up to look like John. The 3 of us were in this makeup room, and yeah, I did that for like a month and a half.
That's got to be a surreal moment. Yeah. You ever like kind of like step out your side of yourself and go, oh my God, you know, do I belong here? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was so long ago. I almost forget it, you know.
Yeah,
but
it's history. It's so
no,
cool.
it makes a great story, and yeah, it's just a part of my trip.
Yeah.
Part of my trip.
So over the years, you get back to the States. Is the emphasis of your life ninjutsu now? Is it what other endeavors, or Is this something? I know you were sought after. I mean, I know like you're on every magazine cover, and I'm sure some of it you might, like say, hey, it'd be cool to be on a cover, but I know a lot of it come crashing down on you. At least in my martial art world, everybody knew who you were. I'll be 58 this year. I have a Shonru background, but then I ended up with Fred Dagerberg, who you know well. I've been with him since '82, and but it's always been Stephen Hayes, ninjutsu, and you were the man that he talked about with respect. I know other people in ninjutsu. If it comes up and they talk about history, your name pops in there. Was this something that was thrown at you more? Did you get home thinking I'm going to go back to regular life? I'm going to be this, but the martial arts just poured in? Was it something you ran after? I know you love martial arts. You probably well, obviously you're going to train until the day you die, but did you think it was going to turn into what it is? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, there are kind of two answers to that, Ron. When I was like 29, living in Japan, I had a sense as I was studying this martial art, I had a sense this is going to be big. I went, oh man, my kickboxing friends used to tease me, in the mid 70s, you're going to go and be an assassin. You're going to do all this. Yeah. And I would laugh along with them. Yeah. Crazy. But I got to do it. I've got to study this. I think there's something more. And so I had a sense that it was going to be big. And, Chuck Norris made this ninja movie, Octagon, and there was a novel called The Ninja that came out, and they made TV shows and all this kind of thing. And so it was really like surfing on a rough surf. Ooh, I had this.
Forget to mention all the ninja utensils, kitchen utensils too, that's out there, and the ninja grinders and the.
Actually,
to this day they got a ninja grinder now.
Yeah, we have a ninja air fryer.
That's awesome. You know what? I would love to get a picture of him every time he goes and looks at that thing. Just be great.
Here's a real true story. My older daughter, who's now 38, she's got kids, but when she was little, she was like 6 years old. We're in a Toys R Us store. Have you remember Toys R Us? Just huge and just walls of these toys. And we lost Raina. Where's Raina? And so we walked around the corner, my wife and I, and here she is, this little teeny kid. And she's looking at this wall just covered with action figures. And they're all ninjas, and they're doing all this ninja stuff. And I swear this is true. She says, Dad, when you came back from Japan, instead of teaching ninjutsu, you should have gone in the toy business.
Oh, that's awesome.
My marketing oriented daughter, and
yeah, she's not wrong.
She is not wrong. She's not wrong. People will pay you so much more to entertain them than to educate them.
Oh yeah. But what a compliment, though. Think of this whole ninja craze, especially in America. Junri gets it for Taekwondo. You should get it for ninjutsu. And it's, to me, that's your mantle. And it, what a legacy. So awesome. And the whole Bruce Lee craze, everybody loves him, and then some people will tear him down. There's always going to be those ugly people in the world.
Oh yeah.
But those people are usually home looking at their TV, not doing anything. Look what you did. You were in flipping Shogun. Look at that. That's just brilliant. I respect it so much. So what's going on today for you? What's your endeavors? What are you doing outside of beating up people?
Well, I in around the mid 90s, I really saw that this historical ninjutsu that I was taught, I loved it, and it like so expanded my boundaries. And but it really was a 1500s kind of thing, and the way that we would attack each other. People don't fight that way in modern America, and So I became kind of obsessed with the idea, what if I could take the principles, Ron, you're involved in a very principle oriented, martial training. So you can maybe identify with this. The technique looks a little different, but the principle is adapted to the way people would throw a punch or the way they would fight. This is in the mid 90s. And so I started to develop this kind of alternate way. And, it was very well received by people who were not doing ninjutsu.
Yeah.
Oh man, the people who are doing ninjutsu, they just abandoned me, but women could do this. I call it Toshin Do. Toshin. So when you write the nin of ninja, at the top is sword and at the bottom is heart, or heart. And I just took the sword and put it here and put the heart there, and it's Toshin. And no, it worked great. People loved it. And there's a psychological aspect to it where I took a lot of these, classical Japanese teachings, like the 5 elements. What's that mean? Well, we all respond differently to conflict or confrontation. Somebody gets pushed. Some people hold their ground and they repel and they send it back. Other people, no, they angle out and tactically return back. And, so we use the same thing with arguments. Somebody comes at you a certain way. Well, I got him pegged. I know how he's arguing. I can respond in this. And this just took off. So I had a period where in the early 80s, I wrote a lot of books, didn't write many books. And then from the late 90s, I started to write again about this Toshin martial art. So there's a very distinct physical training. I tease people, I say, anything bad that could happen to us, we practice how to not have that happen. So, well, do you have ground fighting? Yeah, we got ground fighting in there. Well, do you have like kickboxing? I'd pay if a champion kickboxer attacked us in a parking lot. We'd have a way of dealing with that. And anything bad, it's non-denominational martial arts, but we got to use a title on it. We got to use a title on it. So I'm doing that. And
While you're still on that subject, though, I think what really intrigued me when I first met you and got introduced to Nimpo is that the strategy, when, because I remember the camp, it said the art of winning. And I go, what is this, like egotistical? You guys think you're all, but it's really going into a situation, because a lot of times if you start getting into a fight, whether it's a verbal fight or if it's a physical confrontation, immediately emotions control you, right? And then that's the worst thing to do. But when you study the philosophy, in the kind of his history of ninjutsu, and then the way Steve presented it, these 5 elements, you're in an argument, you don't just let emotions take over, you become like water and absorb it, and then all of a sudden you come back for your attack. So you have a strategy, whether you're dealing with, a peer or it's your manager, you come back and you actually create a win-win, and you don't make it like, because a lot of people get in arguments and someone says something they wish they didn't say, and they can't take it back because you worked out of emotion, where what he taught basically let you articulate what was going on and have a strategy, which most of the times we don't. A fight comes in, it's like guy spills beer on you, next time this guy's in your face, and all of a sudden you're like this. You kind of sit back and you figure out, and you start to work your response accordingly, which to me, that was the greatest thing I learned, I think, from you, Steve, is, and I still practice that and teach my students that today. I don't always do it. Sometimes I do go in emotion or something. I'm like, but it's nice to have something to really think about, when you're in a situation like that.
Well, and now in 2021, things are very different than when we started training in the early 80s. If you remember the 80s, it was old timey, like if 2 guys got in a fight, everybody back off and they'd watch them fight. And not anymore. If you watch YouTube, there's a swarm.
Yeah.
4 or 5 guys jump on one, and it's okay. It's not cowardly. It's not, no, that's the way we do things now. 4 or 5 guys jump on and they beat up a guy, and then they, wow. I mean, Chuck Norris movies aside, how are you going to handle that many people spontaneously creating mayhem? Somebody's trying to grab hair and somebody's shoving and you lose your balance and this person's over here. And it's very difficult to train for. Now, so we've developed some exercises, 2021 exercises, but they can't be kata. They can't be things that you practice and you remember this. It's so different.
Yeah.
And I question whether most martial arts did they keep up with that. If you go to tic-tac-toe school and we're teaching, do you start out bowing to each other and get in a ready to fight position? That's not what happens on YouTube. That's not what happens on YouTube. People just appear out of nowhere. Oh, wow. How many martial arts? Or Cliff, what you were talking about, this conversation where, somebody's trying to push you into a fight or whatever, and, ego takes over and emotion. How many are dealing with that in the school, where, hey, I don't feel like fighting. This knucklehead's had a bad day. He's had a bad week or a bad lifetime. I don't know. I don't deal with people like that. I have a happy life. I'm blessed. Yeah, but he's dragging you down and he's calling you names, and we just say something.
There's a need for the bowing and everything else, because just think of for every kid that might come into your dojo, you're changing him because he could turn into that other guy. And it's just before we started this podcast, you and I briefly touched on it, is the respect factor. It's gone a lot. And, I talked about the MMA, like events and stuff like that, where you bump into somebody that like wanting to fight you right away, and I'll say it again, it's martial arts supposed to teach you character, not turn you into a character. And that's what you have. And that's what I really admire about you, So, and I think you fill a gap right now that's really, really missing in the martial arts. So,
yeah, but I mean, it's really unpopular, isn't it? I mean,
sometimes we're not the most popular kid in the class. I'm sorry, what, Larry?
It's going to have a demographic, just like everything. I mean, Ron probably remembers this. I'm sure Cliff does too. I mean, when I was younger, he's trying to show me sword techniques. I'm like, I just want to bash his head in with a stick. Just give me a stick. If I couldn't use it with a stick, it didn't matter. I don't want to learn a sword technique. I'm not going to have a sword, right? And now as I get older, I see that blade game come out. I see the understanding of it. And it's like, it reminds me of Dr. G. You come in and it's like you're the Bohr system, and then all of a sudden later you start to taper a little bit and you see the wiseness, the difference between Thai boxing and Silat, like we were talking about earlier. When you first come in, all you want to do is bang, and then later you start seeing all these other things that come out and play. And I think we can give it a lot more respect, but we're not mature enough yet for it. So I think the gross nature of the younger demographic, they're not going to be ready for it. But those people that are getting a little bit older are going to probably love it,
Larry, that is very insightful. Very insightful.
5 points for Larry today.
No, that people aren't ready. When I started martial arts, I was 17 years old. To be honest, I don't know that I would have been ready for a guy who talks like me. No, look, I want to know how to fight. I've seen people picking on each other, abusing each other. I wasn't picked on, but I saw other kids get picked on. That's not right. And little child righteousness, kind of thing. And I just want to learn how to, if we go to the gutter, I want to be the one who comes out of the gutter. And now, my motivation is very different. And I'm still very interested in authentic fighting. That's why I say I discovered in 2021, no, gangs, that's the way you do it. So let's make the training look a little bit like that, or at least part of the training look a little bit like that. Self-development. How are people tricking you into stupid fights. They're just pushing buttons, you know.
We live in this fast food world like McDonald's. I want it in minutes, and and for a system like you're gonna do miles and miles of repetition, just marching up and down, doing your kata, doing your whatever, and it's got its place. And I still like it, and I come back to it more in my older years because I went through the time like, I don't want to do that, and now I go, God, I needed that. My father-in-law used to say, Ron, you're fast, slow down. He's telling me all the time. And I'd be like, I'm fast. But then all of a sudden I got hit one day and I'm like, hey, I got hit. And what I didn't realize is I was getting older and I was slowing down. So I couldn't be sloppy anymore, where speed helped me recover and stay safe. That was leading me. So I went, my form's got to clean up. And I had to start working that, which I should have worked more from day one. So the youth in me, what is it? The youth is wasted on the young, and it really is, because, I love the walk that you walked, because you went there and I'm sure they gave you no slack. You were that, you were that foreigner and you want this, they're going to make sure. And I don't blame them. I'm sure you don't, because if you're going to take that back home, they're going to want it crisp and beautiful,
Actually, there were some the Japanese didn't like me.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean,
I've been there. I know. I mean, it's a wonderful place, but just here, I know a lot of people don't like Asians.
But Rumiko does like you now, right? I mean, Rumiko does like you.
She put up.
You had children with her, right?
She put up with me,
You know what Steve was always good at is just he's a great storyteller. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember this, Steve, but he would always talk about, and we in Asano talk about this too. Sometimes you have to look at the history and the culture to really understand what's happening today. Yeah. But he was talking about, he says, in the old years in the dojo, when you would take up your gi and you're wrapping your belt in class and you bow, and Steve would say, in Japan, all this, like when we wore our gi, it's like your underwear. And then he says, and the thought came to me all these years, I was bowing to my underwear at the end of class. The story, I just love that story. But he'd have this, like, you never thought about it, when we make it a formal thing, and at the end we're like, really, we're bowing to our underwear, at the end of class. So.
Yeah, I found that in a museum, the 47 Ronin. This is a famous Japanese story. It really happened. Sure. These guys went for revenge against some guy who tricked their leader, and in the museum, looks like a judo gi, and this is almost 50 years ago. And I said, wow, why would they have a judo gi here? And my Japanese friend said, it's not a judo gi, that's his underwear. He wears that underneath his silks. And wait a minute. Yeah, so when you're going to train and get all sweaty, you take your silks off and you just got your underwear on. And so I said, so that'd be like a t-shirt and running shorts in the West today. He goes, yeah.
That's great.
That's awesome. So, I'm bowing to my underwear, and
I'll never look at my gi the same. Thanks.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, little things like that you discover along the way. And there are people who don't like that story. Don't like that story at all. Well, no, Stephen, we bow, we show respect. Absolutely, go for it, pal.
Yeah. Again, no, I think what you said earlier, as we get older and we train for a long time, and one of my students actually just posted today, and he reached out probably about a year ago and said, I just wanted to reach out and apologize because I was this kid, 17, 18. He left because once I became, part of EFC, I started, before I just like taught everything, I didn't have as much structure. I didn't have kids, but now, he didn't like the fact that I had, more structure and we weren't doing the things that we used to do. And I said, well, look, man, it's like, now I'm running a business. Things had to change a little bit, so, I made some changes, but he said, and he was apologetic. I said, no, you were just young. We all grow beyond that. Now he's back training with me, right? But as he was posting today about, training martial arts, and I said, the thing about you're going to learn about it, see, now that you're older too, is the longer you train, the more that you see underlying that the general public doesn't see in martial arts. And we grow more physically, spiritually and mentally through the martial arts. Unfortunately, most people don't get that opportunity. We know that because as we train, we see things differently. We experience things differently, right? It's almost like you have these receptors that open up and you just have an intuition of knowing, you know what I mean? You have a knowing of the technique. You see things that your students don't see that still could have trained for you for 10 or 15 years, right? Just throwing a basic cross or something, and you start looking at it and you go, how come they don't get it, right? Because they're just not ready yet. They haven't matured, I think, what do we say, not physically, but just martial art mentally. They haven't put enough hours in yet, you know. And I think you put those hours in and time and you just sort of go to a different place that most people will never get to experience, right? But the youth today, they just like want it now. Everything's instant. They want it now. Like, isn't there an app for me to get really good at martial arts really quick? You know, I mean, that's how they are.
That's what I was touching on, is everybody wants it right away, and they don't want to do the old, you know. It's my instructor, Sifu Dan Asano. He'll say it's like jumping rope, you know, and I always use this analogy. You know, you can sit there and skip in front of somebody. When you fight, are you using that? You're using elements of it, but you're not using that, but you still need that within you, or it's still a good attribute to have within you. But I'm not going to go, Steven, you want to spar? And I sit there and start jumping rope. That's not the deal, but it gives me benefit. And it's the same thing with everything that you teach, every old way that, you know, it's there for a reason. And all these people who divorce themselves from now, I think are cheating themselves. So.
Don't you think though, Stephen, though, that the Japanese culture is so, I mean, different than America, just because of honor, patience, you know? I mean, I know some of the youth changing a little bit, but do you think that hardly any American kid could sit through a tea ceremony and learn that slowness, discipline, you know, because they just, you know what I mean, to do that? But yet, you know, I watched my relatives when I was in Japan and just their whole school system, like, you know, that they would go, I thought they were going to bed at 9 o'clock and they go up and I go, well, that's rude. They didn't even say goodnight. You know, they just went up to bed. They come back like at 11 o'clock and they were studying the whole time, and they go to bed like at midnight and they get up at 6, they get on the train, they're heading out like an hour, going to school all day. They come in and they're doing it like 5 days a week. And then they get up on Saturday for a half day. I'm like, wow. And they're all working hard so they can get into the next school, you know, the next secondary school. It's just a whole different culture. Do you think that's changing much in Japan now, or do you think it's still kind of innate?
Well, yeah, it's changing. Rumiko and I go to Japan every year. We haven't for 2 years now because of this COVID business. But no, it is changing, but the people are so used to what you described, Cliff, that the change is kind of, you know, alarming. But, you know, I can see that in the martial culture. I remember there was some guy, you know, in a classical Japanese martial art. He was 84 years old. And the interviewer said, oh, how come you never wrote a book? And this impeccable master, you know, he's like the super guy. And he says, I don't think I've learned quite enough to write a book yet. You know, he's been doing this for 70 years. And, but there's that Japanese humble mentality. Now, what I'm going to say is maybe offensive to some people, but now the popularity of the Brazilian martial arts, you know, it's taken America by storm. Maybe the Brazilian martial arts matches American culture a little more than the Japanese. Brazil invented machismo, you know? Yeah. Hey, I take any man I want. I take any woman I want, and you can't do anything about it. In fact, I put out a $10,000 challenge. I challenge you to come in and, whoa, that's very different from the Japanese, you know, oh, I'm not good enough really to write a book yet. And
point culture.
That is a part of what you get. And young kids are impressionable. And, you know, I mean, I have friends, Brazilian friends in Brazilian jiu-jitsu that, you know, they've put up videos of themselves in an actual fight. You know, they videoed themselves in a fight, beating some idiot on the street. And I've got to laugh. That's cool. That's cool. That's more fitting the American way, I think, than the Japanese. But is that what we need right now in 2021? Is that what the youth need? Nobody messes with me, and I get whatever girl I want. And I'm just posting that as a question. Is that the future of the martial arts? Is that what it's going to be? Who's the toughest? Who's the baddest ass? Who's the cruelest? Who can whip who? And eventually it runs out. I mean, like right now with the Olympics, I was quite shocked at this Simone Biles pulling out at the last moment. God, she's waited her whole life for this, And
I read a really interesting interview today about it. What was it? What's her name? Is it Strove, or the girl who hurt her leg? Carrie Strove, or God, I can't think of her name. The little girl in the gymnastics with the Russian coach, and she did the vault with one leg and landed it. They said that she was hurt. He pushed her into it. She didn't want to do it. He's like, "You're gonna do this. You could do it. How's your leg? Kind of walk it off kind of thing." And she made the vault. She landed it, and it ended her career. You never seen her anymore. The damage. So they cared more about the medal with her than the person. So then we see Simone and what she's going through psychological. Is that any worse than a leg injury? It could be. I mean, people kill themselves over mental illness. There's a lot of pressure. She wasn't right. She's also jumping in the air, doing all these twisting flips. If she's not right, she could land and kill herself. So, there's that whole other side to look at, and before I see it in a way both ways. Should she have signed up for the team if she didn't want to see it through? But, they had an alternate, so she knew she wasn't cutting the team off. It's a real slippery slope on that one. I think, I could see mental illness, she's not right for the job at the time. Maybe she needed to step back.
Hey, we're getting close to our end. So, Larry, did anything you want to add? And Steve, if you want to do any shout out to any of your social media or anything you want to share, but I think we'd love to have you come back and continue on some of this conversation. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I had two questions, like I mentioned before.
I'd like to hear his follow-up, what he thought, because he looked like he was going somewhere real quick. Sorry.
Oh, well, I think there are ages, of time and culture. And right now we are in a time when it's like okay to talk about like a mental illness, and you have these famous Hollywood stars. They're billionaires. They live in palaces and they have ranches in Montana, and they drive $1 million cars, and they work 4.5 weeks a year. And but I'm a little depressed. And everybody goes, "Oh, she's so brave, to talk about this." This would not have happened 20 years ago. You couldn't have said that. Things change. And so what are we going through? What lessons are we giving our young people? This isn't a criticism. It's just what is. 20 years ago, you would never have had, a star talking about the challenges. The average person would have no idea what I go through. They wouldn't have spoken of that. And if you go far enough back to like a Marilyn Monroe, geez, maybe killed herself. I don't know, at 30 some years old. She just couldn't deal with that kind of pressure.
Or maybe if she had been able to back away, like 42 years ago, I was shot in a drive-by. My two friends were killed and I was shot.
No kidding. Really?
I started to have like a little bit of anger issues. And I was told, man up, you're alive. That was my therapy. Nowadays, kids see a therapist after something like that happens, and maybe that would have done me some good, So
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Larry, what do you got?
So like I mentioned before, it's giddy for me. I mean, I had your books. I remember, there was only two things that we all wanted to do. We either wanted to be a ninja or be Bruce Lee. That was it. You know what I mean? So, I remember two things in one of your books. I can't remember which book because it's been decades now, but it just stuck with me. And I didn't have any formal training in this technique, but it actually worked, and it was kind of this hypnotizing thing where the two people are squaring off and the other person just kind of is moving really slow and staring at the other person intently. And then it's almost like the other person they're paused in time. It was the most amazing thing. And then, they get hit, they get scored on, right? And I actually found that to work, under we were just sparring or whatever, but it was the most interesting thing to feel it, doing it to somebody. I hadn't had it done to me, I guess, but it was really interesting. I guess I could probably say I've had it done by Ron with knife sparring. He'll do that where he just stops and it's like the whole world just stopped and then boom, he's got you. You know what I mean? But it's like, it was just so amazing. I can't remember what that technique was called, but I believe, it was cool. So I didn't know if you had any elaboration on that.
But in the 80s, he taught a lot of those, this whole thing about sake and this intent of harm. Remember that, Steve? And all the drills that we did, creating it, which was uncanny because I could actually feel people when they projected that coming up behind you. And as I created it, they would start to feel like this tingling in their spine, So a lot of that came from, I think, part of that too, is what he was teaching back in the day.
That one primal element that we still have from our.
Yeah. I can't even sneak up on my wife anymore because she's mastered that.
Be careful with them. Yeah, be careful. No, I think that is true, where if we're using our mind where we can, Larry, like to say, Ron will do something to stop and then like, what's going on? And then there's like a little gap in time. And then all of a sudden you kick in and, oh, I got suckered by that. We're vulnerable. So, one of the basic lessons we'll teach people is, you get in front of somebody who's having a bad day and he's yapping and, so there's going to be an ego fight or he's going to call me a name. But anyway, I'm not going to fight this guy unless he jumps me. This is different than a robbery or a kidnapping or something like that. So, we just hands up, fingers spread apart. Yeah, that's one thing. If you reverse the hands, whoa, this is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Oh, just knowing that and pointing at somebody. No, don't point. Just use your fingers. Just use your fingers. Point. Ooh, I got my hands back to him. My hands are forward. Little tiny things like that we can show. Oh, wow, that kind of breaks the energy. Oh, yeah, no, I am so sorry. You're the third guy today who wants to kick my ass. I'm making everybody mad at me today. I'm going to just get in my truck. I'm going to go. Excuse me, pardon me, What's some tough guy going to say to that, Now, you have to say it from down in your stomach. You can't say it from high. Look, I made 3 people mad at me. No. He gets it. This is what Cliff was talking about, this sake. He gets it. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. I'm screwing your day up. Forgive me. I'm making everybody mad at me today,
That's awesome.
Say that the guy wondering, something is transmitted in that. Okay, well, remember that. Yeah, be careful next time, or whatever. And get in the car and go
Awesome.
home.
That's awesome.
Art of winning, right there. Art of winning, right?
Art of winning. Yeah. And are we teaching people this in a self-defense oriented school? Are we teaching people how to use your voice, how to say certain kind of things? Some guy comes up to you at the bar and he's giving you a hard time and you just look over at him and go, well, my friend, I can see we're from the same neck of the woods. I mean, that's a nonsensical thing to say. It doesn't mean anything, but he kind of gets something from that. You're supposed to apologize. You're supposed to, bluff me or whatever. You just say some nonsensical thing. Okay, well,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, this has been fun. This has been fun. I've really enjoyed. I did all this yapping here, I enjoyed talking with you.
So we'd love to have you back. You rock. You're fun, and I would love to plan even master's classes if we could arrange it with you and Cliff or something like that. And what we talk about master's classes is we have Zoom classes where we'll just invite people in. We'll promote it real well, and an hour of your time, and we work out all the details if you're up for it.
Sure, let's talk about that. That sounds fun. Cliff, thank you so much for inviting me in. Had a ball. Yeah,
I enjoyed it too. I never get tired of spending time with Steve. It's always nice to spend time with them.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, sir, thank you so very much. It was awesome. So,
Yes. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, good being with you. Good being
Thank
with you, gentlemen. Yeah.
all right. Bye-bye.